Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Lunchtime Topics. Today is Thursday, January 21st, and this week we are back with another lunchtime topic. In case you missed it, last week's topic, Eric Regan, the co-founder of Focus Lab, spoke on intentional leadership, and you can catch that on our website at thecreativecoast.org. So in the month of January, we've been focusing on, and I wouldn't say New Year's resolutions, but more so how to set goals and be intentional, create healthier habits as they relate to your work. And so today we're really fortunate to have RD Weeks with us. He's going to be talking about decluttering our digital world with everything that's happening in the news and on the internet. It's really easy to always be plugged in. I know I felt that way. And with the move to remote work last year, everyone is more online than ever. So if you find yourself overwhelmed or stressed because you're always staring at a screen, RD can help with that. And he's going to share helpful tools and strategies for us to create healthier digital habits. So big thank you, RD. We really appreciate you being here today. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you so you can get started.
Yeah, well, thank you, Kate. I appreciate that too for being able to be here and serving the Creative Coast community. This is something that I am so passionate about talking. I think it's so important too that we continue to highlight this, especially during the past year with 2020 and what we're living in when it comes to the pandemic and just remote work. And so, what I always say too is like your digital devices can overwhelm your life if you let it. And so that's a big thing I want to talk about today is being able to help you take back control. You feel like there has been that sense of feeling out of control, overwhelmed with how you're using digital devices, I want to be able today to talk to you about how can we get through this in a way that feels much healthier with how we're navigating our digital devices. And overall too, like I think back to when I first started with this, of getting involved with it and feeling that overwhelm, I'm always reminded about this imagery that I want to share with you, which is being able to, and especially too, it's kind of reminiscent with 2020 with parties and getting together with people. It's like reminding myself when I first got into it of like going to this party that you're so excited for. You're ready to go into this party. It's something you've been looking forward to. Maybe it's a dinner party, seeing friends again. And you're like really, really excited to dive into it. And so you go to this house where the party's being held and you walk through the door and then you realize that all of a sudden the door locks behind you and the only way to get in is from the outside. And then you've just realized that there is over like 100 people in this party that you were not expecting to be there. And I know for me, like 2020 has reminded me that I'm very much an extrovert. Like I get a lot of energy from people. This is a moment where even for me, I'm like, what is about to happen right now? And then all of a sudden, all these people start coming at you and asking a million questions, asking for your advice, starting to like tell their story. And they're just bombarding you constantly with just information overload. And all you wanted to do was go in and like eat some of the food, like maybe talk to like, maybe Sam, like with your friends and just chat and like have a good time. But literally it is like just an overload of information coming your way. And what happens is you are trying to turn around to go back out. You're like, all right, this is not the party I signed up for. This is not where I wanted to be. And you're trying to exit the door, but all of a sudden the door opens and then there is just a stream of people coming in saying like, RD, like for me, it's like RD, hey, I got this, I got to tell you, RD, like this is something that could be really cool for you with health, like RD, this could be really great for your business. And you are getting all of these different, information coming your way. And this lasts sometimes like up to, or not sometimes, but can last up to 12 to 14 hours. So I want you to kind of visualize that of this happening 12 to 14 hours. And you're like, just trying to breathe like that. For me, when it comes to the being in the digital world and utilizing the digital devices, like all you want to do at this party is just breathe, have a nice conversation. You are trying to navigate. So you try to move through the swarm of people. You realize that there's a second floor to this house. So you try to go up to that floor. As you're going up, these people are still coming behind you, yelling at you of like, hey, like I got something to tell you. And you finally find this room. You're like, oh my God, there's a room here. Like, thank God. And you go into the room, you shut it, you lock it. And you're like, let me just at least get some sleep. I've been in here for like 12 to 14 hours. I got to get some sleep. But then all of a sudden, as you're trying to fall asleep, you have the banging against the door, feeling like, it's muffled, but you're like still hearing the, hey, like RD, like I need this, or like you're like Jennifer, like you got to go check this out, or Lou, like this is something you could really utilize with your business, or Kate, you're like, oh my gosh, this could be fantastic for going out and exercising, and you're just getting all this coming in. And then what happens is you finally fall asleep, but then you wake back up and you realize, oh gosh, I'm still at the same party in the same room. And I got to go walk out this door now for another 12 to 14 hours and deal with all this. And so for me, I like to put that as imagery, like as what it feels like to be overwhelmed with your digital devices, and it may resonate with you as well. And that might be something too that you're experiencing. But ultimately what I want to do today is say, okay, how can we get it from how that feels some days to more of actually being able to have a conversation. And, I think about always imagining like the best conversation you've ever had, where it's like that give and that take, and you're able to really be like, it's like effortless. You can really flow with it, and you're getting so many great insights, but also being able to provide your own point of views, or being able to do the certain things that you want to do or say. And for me, like that is something that I think is so important with how we're using our digital devices to say, like, let's get to that point. And so that's what I want to do today with you. So I always like to set the expectations for how it's going to go for today. What I want to do is lay out two foundational pieces. These are two pillars that I've utilized within how I look at utilizing my digital devices. And I always say like digital world. That's kind of like when you're using your digital devices, entering these digital communities, if it's through social media, through health, health communities. There's so many different ways to look at this, but my overarching term I use for this is the digital world. And how you're entering that is through either your phone, computer, even TV too as well. And so bringing it back, it's first I want to share the two pillars. These are two foundational laws as well as principles that I have learned not only through implementing within my own life, but learned from some amazing and much smarter people than me. But these are ones that absolutely have transformed my life of how I look at my digital devices, and ultimately realizing that I have a relationship. I may not know it, but I have a relationship with these digital devices, and I can either decide that I want to show up to that relationship, or I'm going to let the hundreds of people on the other end of that control the relationship and really make it feel very toxic. And we don't want that to happen. We want to make it more about that healthy relationship. It's a great way to kind of get into that mindset. And so from that, I'll then share 3 tools that I, again, have implemented within my life and seen a massive difference with how I'm spending my time. For me, I used to spend over 70 hours a week on my digital devices specifically for work. So today I want to talk specifically about work, how tools can be utilized within your work on any industry, any field. As long as you're using digital devices, you can utilize these tools. So go from like the 70 to less than 10 a week. And again, it was, not only was I learning through my own self, but, hearing from others that are, again, have, high performers, they're high level achievers, as well as also smarter too than me. And so with that being said, after those 3, then I'll open it up for Q&A, where we can have a Q&A session. I'd love to answer any questions too that you may have in regards to this. But yeah, I'm excited to dive into it. So also, before getting into the 2, I like to set an agreement with everyone, that's here. And also those that may be watching. I know this is recorded, so those that are going to be watching later on. But what I want to tell you is I'm going to show up to the best of my ability. I'm going to be present here, providing as much information I can that can really allow you to take action. That is ultimately my goal, is for you to understand, because I know for me, I always would learn. I get all these different insights, hear different people talking, but I would never really implement it. And if you don't do that, then ultimately in the end, nothing changes and you're going back. It's like, hey, RD, this was great. Thank you for this lunchtime talk, but now I'm going to go back to my life and keep doing what I've been doing and still feeling the same way. And so I don't want that to happen at all. I'm here to support you. I'm here to say, we got this, we can do it. So I'm going to show up to my best of my ability to do that for you and to serve. All that I ask from you for support is to be able to come into this with an open mind. So I know that perhaps you have assumptions when it comes to digital devices, different viewpoints. What I'll ask is just you keep an open mind to it. I also know as well that there may be a lot of things happening that were happening before this that you're trying to maybe think about or deal with. And then probably a lot of things that are going to be happening after this that you got to go and deal with for the day. What I want you to do, because I'm going to be present with it, I would love for you to be as best you can present within this time that we have together as well. So if you are on board for doing that on your end for support, I'll do that on my end. I would love, because I like to engage a little bit too with those here, is if you can put in the chat, take some time to just put yes. Put yes, you can put hell yeah, put I'm ready, but I would just love to get a little engagement here. And then I'm going to wait. I got to wait for it. Got to make it happen. Awesome, Jennifer. Appreciate that. Let's do it. I love it. Awesome. Yeah, Kate. Yes. Cool. Cool. Awesome. Sweet. All right, Luke. Yep. Yeah. Perfect. All right. So that being said, let's dive into it. So the first, and also too, I talk fast. Like in the past, I've like been told that. So I do talk fast. I'm gonna try my best to slow down, but it's something I'm so excited about. So I'm like, it's gonna be a lot of information, but I'm gonna try to make it concise for you. And then always we have the recording that you can always go back to as well. So for the first one I want to talk to you about, it's called the Parkinson's Law. And you can write that down, Parkinson's Law. This law has allowed me to realize this is my procrastinator at work. So I, for the longest time, would figure out like, hey, I have this deadline, but I would always wait till the last minute to do the deadline. And that could be something for you if it's dealing with clients or team members. Somehow some things don't get done until like the very last moment. And with this law, what it states is it's a natural human behavior. And so it's where we will take the work and fill it up for the amount of time that we've allotted for that task. And that can be both on personal life, on work. But again, it comes back to like, we will just fill that time up. And a great example of this that you could probably relate to, I know I can, especially in this time of 2020, is Zoom calls. So, you set it for a certain amount of time and you realized in that call that, wow, we just spent the entire call, but really may have been just only like 5 minutes of something that was really needed to be said. And that when it comes to this law, that's just a natural behavior. And so if we can just understand this though, and have that awareness, it can start to allow us to shift how we look at our digital devices. And so I just want to, again, we're going back to focusing on some mindset first before getting the tools, because I really want you to just kind of set the stage of like, all right, if I'm realizing this, maybe it's not so much like a problem or something that's wrong with me that I'm like waiting till these last minutes. I thought about this for procrastination. It was like, wow, the weight is off my shoulders. Like, all right, like, okay, it's just a natural thing, but I can now figure out how to improve upon it. And I think that's the most important thing. Sometimes we put way too much pressure on ourselves and feel like, we're something's completely wrong, when it's just like, hey, maybe a little tweak here, a little improvement there. So that has been the first one that I want to share that has been absolutely transformational in how I use my digital devices. Now, the second one I want to share with you is called the 80-20 rule. Now, this one also goes by, I always struggle with his name for the economist. It's Pareto principle is also how it goes by. But a great book too that I recommend is 80-20 Principle by Richard. It is a phenomenal book, but ultimately what it says is that, about, and within the book too, it's some great case studies within this for looking at different industries, different styles of work. But it's overarchingly what this states for the principle is that about 80% of the time that you put into something creates 20% of the time you put into something creates 80% of the results. Now, that can also go the opposite way where it's saying, hey, 80% of the time that you're spending on your digital devices are only reaching 20% of the results that you're creating when it comes to work. And so that can even get as high as 99-1, 90-10 in certain situations. So what this caused for me, and you may be having that moment too, is like, oh, wait, wow. Like there is a lot of wasted time. If I haven't taken the time to really look at it through the lens with how I'm using my digital devices as, all right, this 80-20 principle, or just knowing like, where am I spending my time? If it's more of just like, I'm trying to just survive today and move on to the next, then ultimately what I've discovered within my own life, as well as talking to others and those, and learning from others too, is wow, there's a lot of wasted time. No matter what, we can spend less time on that. And I think having these two principles, understanding, or both the principle and the law, having that and understanding it can be really transformational in how you tackle these next tools that we'll talk about, and how you can implement that within your life. Because ultimately, again, like we're wanting to really focus in on how do we spend less time so that we can on our digital devices, so that we can spend more time in certain areas that can bring us joy, bring us excitement, bring us that extra level of fun that perhaps don't need to have a digital device there. And it's, again, tough. We're in a time, like we got to realize what time we're in too, where there's a lot more remote. Like we got to give ourselves, again, that like pat on the back of like, we're making it, we're taking it one step forward. We're going to get through this. But at the same time, this can be a great moment to just reassess what is that relationship with our digital devices? So I hope that makes sense. Like, you can also put in the chat here of like, that makes sense. That'd be great. Or like, yes, like, I was like, just to make sure that that's making sense here. And then we'll dive into now the tools. And so, as I said, I want to talk about 3 tools that you can perhaps utilize within your day. And the key to that you want to do within each of these tools and how you show up with your digital devices each day is just ask the question, why? Like, again, you want to know, it's a powerful word, but why am I on my digital devices? And really be conscious of that, because subconsciously, again, there are a lot of people, and I know from my own advertising background, there's a lot of this vying for your attention. It's happening. But if we're not being conscious of why am I going into this digital world using my digital devices, if we don't take the time to do that each and every day, and really, you can take it small moments at a time, maybe just once in the morning, and then the rest of the day goes by of like, oh man, I tried. But if you at least start, then you can build and compound the impact that can have maybe over 30 days, over a year. But ultimately, if you're not even taking those steps, it's as simple as, if you don't do that, then you're going back to this overwhelm. It's just, that's what's going to happen. And so it is as simple as that, as just being able to ask, why am I going on these digital devices each time, and really understanding your priorities within your digital device usage. And so these tools that I'll share, that we'll start with the first one, hopefully will help you, as well as being able to say, these are my toolkits, like this is my toolkit. These are some tools that I can utilize. And with all 3 of these are ones you don't need to download an app for. You don't got to do that. It's going to take a little bit of time, a little bit of effort on your end. But ultimately, what that does is it's going to maximize the amount of time you get back that you can then implement in other areas. And that doesn't mean implement more in work, because that's just something I don't want to have happen. That's usually the case where it's like, oh, I have all this free time. Let me now do more work so I can go, instead of 4x return on my time for the business, I'm getting 8x return. We don't want to do that. That just is still, it does not help. It doesn't help. It just continues to reinforce the problem. And from what I was talking to K2, like, seems with the community, it's a lot of, solo entrepreneurs, CEOs, freelancers. And so, again, you have more ability than perhaps someone that is in a, in a big corporation or or is a part of a business, but is more from an employee standpoint. Even those, as an employee, I know I've talked to and seen and talked to and learned from others that have been able to make that work. But here and now with these tools, you get to implement that in an amazing way that can really be transformational. And the key is taking that accountability, which is hard. I know for me, it was scary to be able to take that on, because I was definitely worried about, wow, all right, now I have to do this. I have to make it happen. And can I do that? And again, I'm here to say, like, yes, you can. We can do this together. And so let's dive into the first one. So the first tool that I'm going to share with you, it's called the Watch Bell tool. Now, this one is utilizing the Parkinson's law, and it's implementing that train of thinking into this tool. And now this tool, all you need is either a watch, or you can even use your phone because it has a timer on it. But the key with this is being able to set limits on your digital tasks when it comes to work, and being able to really set those limits down. Because again, it goes back to that law. If we have 3 hours for something, we're going to spend 3 hours on it. Or if not, we're going to get distracted for 2 hours and 45 minutes and then do the work for 15 minutes that we had to get done. And so if we can start to set limits on those tasks, no matter how big it may seem. I know for me, one of them was replying to emails. I used to take 4 hours to do that. And I set this limit of 20 minutes. And that for me is scary. It's like, oh my gosh, like, are you kidding me right now? Like, there's no way that's possible. But what can happen is if you go and just set it and then just dive into do as best you can, you'll realize looking back after those 20 minutes of, wow, I got way more than I thought done. Because what happens for the brain is it will focus in on, cutting out all the other stuff, and really focusing on what has to get done, because all of a sudden now there's a crunch time. Now there's that limit. We can feel that when it comes to the pressures on, the saying goes like, oh, I do great under pressure. Like, I used to say that, but that was just because now the time limit has been shrunk and I got to focus in on that. So we want to create that for ourselves without having any outside person doing that, or outside deadline or outside client trying to call us saying, you better get this done like ASAP. We don't want that to happen. We want to put that on ourselves in a way that's healthy, rather than all of a sudden just running around feeling like, I always say, like the hair's on fire situation. So that is a great way to really start to do that. I say for work, it's being able to put it from a 20 to 10 minute situation. And again, it can be, it can feel like a lot for a shift and change, but this is just something to try and see how much you can get done that time. Now, the other end of this, this tool, and again, once that alarm goes off, so it's like you put it on your phone, you have that ability through, each phone should have that where it's a stopwatch ability. I also use a watch as well, just set the timer. But what happens as well when that goes off, because sometimes it's an alarm, once it goes off, it also ignites for those that have gone, when it comes to school and those that were dealing with bells that were happening growing up, it goes back into that subconscious mind of like, okay, wow, it just went off, the bell went off, similar to like the alarm going off. It's similar to waking up even. It's like it wakes you up, gets you out. But this causes you to then say in your mind, okay, I got to shift, I got to change. And this works so well with how we're going to utilize this tool for distractions. So we're going to dive and utilize this for distractions as well. This is a great tool for it. And what can happen with, I know for me, when I'm getting on and trying to do tasks, sometimes I put a lot of things off to the side and I wait as much as I can to do them. And usually for me, YouTube is a big, I call it the digital distraction vortex. So the DDV, where I dive into YouTube because I love to learn, I love to gain new insights, I love to see TED Talks, love to hear what people are talking about. Like it's fantastic. Or maybe it's, for you, it could be reading one of the news articles, like a news site that you really enjoy. You dive into those articles, or maybe if it's for research, you can dive into it and just be like, oh, I love this. So let me just spend as much time as I can. But what happens is if we're not also putting limits around those, then hours could go by with us realizing at the end of the day or even midday of, oh my gosh, I haven't gotten to what I actually really needed to get done today. And so this is another great tool to, again, put a limit around those distractions. And once that alarm goes off similarly, then you can be able to revert back into your work. But what again happens is, our brain, it causes us through the distractions going back into work. We do have a delay from a high performing level where it takes about a little over 20 minutes. So again, having that timer set for your distractions, you're just repeating it in your mind to say, okay, look, I got these distractions. I'm setting these timers. They're going off. I gotta, stop having so many distractions. And it's just a subtle step to really be able to help you, one, get off of spending more time on distractions because that alarm might be going off constantly. And, but at the same time, it allows you to really then focus in on like, this is the work I have to get done for the day. And it's just a nice balance within it. It's still honoring the distraction. It's not making you feel guilty or making you feel shameful of like, wow, I just spent all this time on my distractions. Like we want to still honor those because it's natural for us to want to have some variety in the day, but we want to create more and more structure around when those distractions happen as best as we can, because there's a lot of things that we can't control in life, in other areas besides work. But when it comes to utilizing our digital devices, we have all the control in being able to make that happen. We just may not realize it. And that goes back to, being able to communicate, which we'll talk about in another tool with other perhaps team members or clients of how to make sure you're continuing to get that sense of control within how you're doing your work. So that is the first one of the watch bell tool. Hope that makes sense as well. You can give a little thumbs up, a little, type in the chat here. I'm gonna keep it moving because I want to honor the time and make sure we get to Q&A. But the next one is called the Digital Grid tool. Now, this tool utilizes the 80-20 principle. It brings that into play, as well as now the Parkinson's law. And this tool, again, this one, as well as the watch bell tool, are two that are for specific day-to-day situations. This last one that I'll share is more of an overarching system that you can look at all your digital activities with work as well as even personal and implement this last tool within all of those. But this one here for the Digital Grid tool is a great way to really get to the heart of what do I have to get done for the day and actually make sure you're doing that. so that you can get a win for the day. And then everything else can just feel like, all right, I got what I needed to get done. All the rest of it can really feel like icing on the cake, cherry on top. Like it's all good. And you're not feeling so much of that pressure. And so with it, how it's set up is all you need is a piece of paper and a pen. I know it's a little bit different from what you perhaps you were expecting, but like all you need is that. And what you can do is just write down 2 tasks that are going to have to be that must for you for the day within your digital devices that you're utilizing. So what are the 2 ones? You can even just have 1 if you'd like. I recommend no more than 3, just with how we take in information and what we can get done. That can be really difficult. And these are just like key movers. So there's going to be always having to put out fires that can exist throughout the day, but these are the ones that you're going to do to help move your business forward in the digital world and how you're using your digital devices. Because if you can do that and continue to take some time and a lot for that, then it can help in the other areas of dealing with the other situations that are going to come up naturally through the day. If it's having to communicate with team members about certain projects coming up, checking in with them, or just having to review certain situations. Maybe it's a website that crashes and you got to get on that. You're at least still moving forward in how you're using your digital devices for your work in a way that feels still like a win for the day. And again, with this one, you want to set a time limit for it. And so this could be up to 75 minutes is recommended for these 2 tasks. And to get them done, I always recommend at the beginning of the day when you enter into the digital world, that's like the first thing you do is you dive into getting these 2 things done. And again, it could be maybe just buying as simple as a domain name for your new project that you're going to be doing, to also maybe writing a new headline for social media. I know for me, I was also back in doing content creation. So maybe this is the time to really dive deep into a new creative space of how you're going to get a certain product out into market, and you're allowing yourself this time to go research and take those few minutes to do that and find maybe one key change that you can make. So that is another great tool to really dive deep into continuing consistent momentum forward. So again, that overwhelm of everything else that's going to happen doesn't feel like overwhelm anymore within the digital devices. It feels like, all right, I've gotten, like, you're coming from a much better place than feeling like, oh my gosh, I got to just put out all these fires and I didn't do anything for the day. Because you never want that to happen, where at the end of the day, you just feel like completely defeated, and then you lose all that momentum that perhaps you had been working towards and building up towards. And that's just natural. Like, it happens. We have all those days. I know for me, I still have overwhelming days. So that's something, especially even a few weeks back, where I had a little breaking point for me, and I had to reevaluate and take a step back and go back to these tools. Because again, these are to help you get out of that. So you're feeling the momentum and feeling that positive relationship and healthy relationship with your digital devices. And also to now stepping before we get into the third one. So that's the second one, is the digital grid tool. I also want to share something that came up and it's also talked about, it may talk about in Q&A, but notifications. So something that can come up is, I've seen it, is like, hey, like I need to have my notifications on when it comes to my phone or computer. Like I got to get these updates. And if it's, having to respond to certain clients or having to be able to make sure that certain products are out to market at the right time, like I got to make sure my notifications are on. What I say to that, and I've experienced that, I've been in that place where it's like, man, I have to have these, I have to answer these people, I got to do this and that. What I've realized and what was shared with me it was pretty blunt. So I'll share it too, but I was like, oh man, that makes sense. It's like, if we're really feeling that busyness, then it is a level of laziness where we're not setting, it's a lack of the priorities. And we want to really set our priorities. And a key thing with that when it comes to our notifications is, unless we're in a life and death industry where we need to be on call if someone's life is at risk, and that's a small few number within that. And that may be you too. That may be you. And there's other ways to work around this. But I just want to say this generally as notifications is, I recommend you cut out all of your notifications. Again, you may say, like, I think back to someone saying, hey, like I had to take care of websites. Like if something went wrong, I had to have websites ready to go, like up and running, taking care of that. Again, with this last one that we'll do, we talk a little bit about how this tool can help you with automating that process. So you're not feeling like you always have to be on call, ready to go. So the key that I say with notifications is you can go in your settings for, especially your phone, setting really turn those all off. So instead of each morning, you're getting bombarded constantly with these different stimuli that are coming in, because again, there's hundreds, if not thousands of people on the other end that I've been able to learn from that say, look, our whole goal is to get your attention. That's why we want you on these phones, utilizing the apps that we have allowed for app developers to come on and utilize that. And so the key is to know that if you don't come into it each day, realizing I'm going to choose where I'm going and really set that for yourself, set that for your life with your digital devices with work, then again, that overwhelm is going to come in. And so I just want to say that it's a small thing. Like, I know we can get to specifics, especially if it's, I know it's different always for different industries, but there's a lot of similarities too with just getting to the root of the problem. But I wanted to just put that as well out there. And we'll move now into the final one that falls in line with this for a system. And this last tool that I'll share before getting into the Q&A is called the EAD tool. Now, it's an acronym, and I will say that it was inspired and learned from this from Tim Ferriss, who I love his work, studied a lot of his work, and it's something that I think is really powerful and important to utilize within our digital devices for how we show up each time with work. And so what it stands for, I'll say it all, and then we'll go through each acronym, is eliminate, automate, and delegate. And so what happens is, especially in the entrepreneurial journey, I've been in it now for a little over 6 years. And what can happen is we usually sometimes go in the opposite direction. And overall, this tool can be utilized for every single task you do. You can create these 3 categories and figure out, it's almost like a self-assessment, self-audit of how you're spending your time on your digital devices. And it's a great way to, again, utilize this. It's a little bit of work up front, but when you can get the clarity, then time can shrink so much for what you have to get done. And you can have so much more time on the back end for maybe 30 days down the line, a year down the line, you'll realize just how much time you're saving. Because I even think of if anything, if you can save I think of like a simple thing. You can save 5 minutes a day, just 5 minutes, where maybe it was like, I decided not to go check this for, I think of like checking my email 7 times a day. I used to do that. I just checked it down to twice a day. Just even 5 minutes over a year could save you 30 hours. And that can be utilized and put into so many different areas. If it's being able to spend time with your kids, being able to go outdoors, go on nature walks, connecting with friends, or being able to just be able to focus on health. There's so much and that's just 5 minutes. Like, imagine if it's 3 hours, 4 hours that you're saving, it really starts to compound over a year. So I want to try to get that for you, of just saying like how far this can go. And so when it comes back to now going into that tool, is again, these are the categories that you're utilizing. And for what happens is sometimes we go the opposite when we get into entrepreneurship. We go into delegate, we go into, I have to build the big team. I have to start having people come on board without doing the work at the beginning of figuring out, especially in the digital devices and how you're navigating that. And 2020, it's really heightened in the remote working. I mean, that's already been going for the trend, but this really heightens it for those that are very much unfamiliar with it. And, sometimes what can happen is there's a lot of miscommunication as an entrepreneur or CEO. You're having to try to communicate with your team member like, hey, this is what I actually wanted you to get done. You create these assumptions of certain tasks that need to get done, where ultimately you could have automated those tasks. You could have eliminated them completely. And you may not be realizing that the other team members getting frustrated because these tasks are, some say like, these are just, tasks that are redundant or unnecessary. And that starts to create those conflicts that could spend hours on the Zoom calls. Like, that's why those Zoom calls could go for a long time, because you're trying to work through these situations, but you haven't done that work at the beginning as an entrepreneur of like, okay, what is really needed to get done when it comes to my work on my digital devices? Like, what is actually truly necessary, and where is all the stuff that really can be cut out or automated, so that when I'm delegating, when I'm giving tasks to team members or to employees as well, if it's a bigger corporation, like, you are actually providing them with something where they can excel at with their skill set, but it's actually moving the company forward, and not just going through something to like waste time or just to give them a task to do so they get off your back. Like, that is something I really feel is important for people to understand more so, is usually we go the delegate delegate, automate, and eliminate. And that's for a lot of different reasons. But the main one is just thinking, hey, we have to do that. Like, we have that team member so that we can feel like we're doing something. But if you do this work, so if you do the opposite of going to eliminate, automate, and delegate, it can create so much more free time too for you. And so with eliminate, what you want to do with that is just figuring out where are the time sucks? Like where are the time sucks for you? Like what comes up throughout the day when you're on your digital devices that really don't bring you, like it's almost like you do it subconsciously. I know for me, and this was just out of the habit, is like I will check right away Gmail. I don't know why I did that. Like I look back, I take like 10 minutes. I'm like, why am I on this again? Like what's going on here? Or, the one is social media is a big one too, as well as just like, I want to go check and, I'm going to go on Instagram. It's like automatic. And so that is just not out of accident. Like that's out of just reinforcing your behavior and wanting you to go do that for the attention. But if you can just start to be conscious of like every time you get on, being able to say like after those 10 minutes, like, why was I on that again? Like, could I have stopped using, like, could I have stopped earlier? Could I have maybe not even done that? And you want to start to put that into the categories of putting this under eliminate. Like that, I could take away those 10 minutes and instead of checking it 7 to 10 times a day, maybe let me check it to 3 times a day on Instagram or other platforms, because, it always goes back to, this is something we'll be talking about later in Q&A if you want, but like, the slot machine situation, that's where it's like, every time I check, let me see if I get notifications, get people contacting me. There's a lot of hidden science behind that from more the business end of those that are creating these certain platforms. But the key is to figure out what can I eliminate right away in my life. And again, all these tools can be utilized right after this call that you can write and implement it right away. The second one is then automate. What can I automate within my business for work? A big one for this one that's pretty obvious, it may not be obvious for you, but it is pretty obvious that can be implemented pretty quickly, is when it comes to billing. So when it comes to online billing for if it's working with clients that are paying you, or if it's suppliers for products, trying to have that conversation, getting on the phone and having that conversation with them of saying, hey, and a great way to say that is saying, hey, look, like I want to be, even more efficient and effective with you in our relationship. I want to make sure that, again, I can spend more time in other areas that can really help benefit our relationship. Can we automate this process of how we pay, especially if it's through different processes of, sending out checks or having to go and pay the invoice online, just finding those ways, getting creative, taking some time to dive deep into that. And again, that's like a separate topic altogether, but that is just a great way to start figuring out how can I automate certain things. Like it's a great kind of like, eye-opening, like, okay, this could be an easy win for me. Like, let me figure out how to automate this. Maybe you're already doing that too with some of your bills. And that goes back to just utilities, even phone, you can use that in the personal side as well. But that's just a great way to stay again, 2 to 3 minutes, but over the course of a year, over the course of 5 years, it really starts to compound in the difference it can make for your life. And then the final one that I'll share is then the delegation. This is, again, more for it's both in a team member standpoint for bigger, CEOs that are running companies, if you're running a company with multiple team members, or also if you're a solo entrepreneur about to jump into this, if it's coming in with a virtual assistant you want to have, or also with just being able to have another team member come on board virtually and having that communication. Or even freelancer on that side too. But this one is where you're now that you've gone through the elimination, the automation with how you're using your digital devices with tasks that need to get done. This is where you can really utilize the strengths of the people you're coming on to give them key tasks that are just stuff you don't want to do. Like it's not so much you don't want to do, but are your weaknesses. Being able to now from, the first 2 standpoints, you understand what those weaknesses are and what your strengths are, and ultimately where you want to spend most of your time. If it's from, I even think for me, like I love to talk and speak to people, but I don't really like a lot of the back end stuff of having to navigate, like, all right, how do I put this in my calendar, the systems? And so being able to just understand what your strengths or weaknesses are by going through this process already with how you're using your digital devices, this is where you can start bringing on people that are going to take care of those weaknesses for you so that you can continue to focus in on your strengths and really being able to propel that forward. and then feeling like it's a great time, like it's a fun time. I believe wholeheartedly, for a belief of mine, that life should be fun. That includes work. It should be a moment of just being able to really enjoy the process. Doesn't mean that aren't going to be those stressors that come up, but you're able to work through those where it's more of the minority than the majority of your time being spent on those. And so this one is really key for just overarching theme of where you're at, where you're spending your time with activities, and really being able to utilize this tool more of it as an overarching system. And so that being said, those are the 3 tools I wanted to share with you today. I really challenge you and really say to this that like the key is like all this can be great, but if you don't implement any of it, or even give it a try, like I always say, like give it a try. Even if it's just for one day, try one of these tools, see what fits. Know this, that, there's hundreds of paths to get to the end destination of what you're trying to achieve. And so one of these tools may not be this, but maybe the other tool might be. The key is just going out there and trying and seeing what works. And so I really say to you, like I challenge you to maybe just take these next 7 days to just implement one of these tools, try it out and document your experience, how you feel utilizing these tools, what works, what doesn't, and then being able to just continue that on. And then maybe someone else comes in that gives you another tool that's not me, that's like, oh, wow, that can really resonate. Just the key is to keep moving forward and build upon it, because if not, if there's no action taken, you'll just continue to go into that feeling of overwhelm and burnout that will happen, because again, it's going to be one of those situations where if you don't put that effort in at the beginning, it's just all of a sudden going to unravel. And it doesn't mean we don't have those tough days. We do. And I want to say that we absolutely can work through those. But the key is to just, even if it was a bad day, being able to say, I'm going to show up even better tomorrow and give it another try. And that's the one thing I would say is like, keep trying each and every day, no matter how tough it may feel. You got this. I'm in your corner too, and rooting for you to be able to have truly that healthy relationship with your digital devices that really allows you to feel like your life is just moving forward in an amazing and spectacular way. And so sending the positive energy to everyone here, excited for a little Q&A. If anyone has any questions, happy to answer. And if not, you can always connect with me on LinkedIn is the best platform. I believe it might have been a link with my profile, but it's RD Weeks 50. That's my best way to, if you want to just send me a message saying, hey, you were here, and you had a question that you want to ask more that way, that works for me too as well. But love to answer anything that anyone has.
I do have a question, actually, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
This is a passion of mine too. I'm very, very, like my time is very important to me. So I use task timers, all of that and stuff like that. But if you had someone, let's say in your company or in your family that is really unorganized and you see them with all these time sucks, like how do you get that it's important? Like how do you portray that to another person, basically? Like how can you get someone else to manage their time really well?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's always tough. I know that because I've had that too as well, where it's, you try to share all this information. You say, oh my gosh, this could be some great ways to save time. But what has been shown to me and also what I've realized in my own life is you can ultimately not change someone that's not willing to change themselves. And so the key is to just continue to show up how you are within your work, especially if it's like, hey, I'm just going to continue to do what I'm doing, working on being able to be as efficient as I can, and just keep putting that out there. And until it might be too, where it's a situation, this has happened. This is a great story where it was a couple and they were saying, look, like I kept telling my spouse, it's like, hey, you got to do this. You got to do this. This is awesome. This is going to help improve your life. And then literally 6 months later, the spouse that was, not listening, but not doing anything, heard the same thing from let's say another speaker. And then they come in and they go, oh my God, hey, I just saw this amazing speaker. He told me to do all this stuff, or she told me to do all this stuff. Like, we should do this. And then literally the other spouse was like, look, I told you that for 6 months and you weren't listening. So it's just, that's going to happen where they got to be ready for that too. But the key is just continue to show up, know that, hey, this may take some time, and do the best that you can. But in the end, you cannot cause that shift to happen unless they're willing to do that as well. But all you can do is just keep showing up, keep putting it out there, and then just, keep that momentum building too for you. So I hope that helped. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
So I have a question kind of related to that. What was the turning point for you, RD? Like, what's your why for doing this and why you got started in helping people declutter their digital world?
Yes, I appreciate that question. So I, for a quick background as well, because I always love diving into the stuff, but for also my own story. So I came in from a marketing perspective especially on social media side. And then I ended up creating a conference as well around that. And I saw all of the amazing, again, I said this at the beginning, there's some amazing benefits when it comes to how we're utilizing technology and our digital devices. But what happened for me was I got to this point of completely being consumed by these devices where I could not go to bed without my phone, without it on, without replying to messages in the middle of the night. And what it was causing for me was just like stresses, like beyond belief, in the standpoint of I was just feeling my entire body was aching from just what felt like all this pressure on my shoulders, and ultimately feeling like so consumed by it where I was starting to have, I started to have panic attacks in association with this. I started to really feel like anxieties were through the roof, and just like it caused me to really get into this moment of just paralysis and not really being able to take action at all. And that for me is something I don't want anyone ever to experience. And it was coming from that place of truly feeling overwhelmed and just not knowing where to even begin with trying to work through this. And so I was grateful from that. And I was subconscious. I wasn't even conscious of this, but I'd always go on YouTube. Again, that's why I love these platforms in the standpoint of what they can do. And there is always two sides to it. But with YouTube, I was able to just subconsciously, I'd go to these motivational talks that are talking about like focusing in on productivity, how to work through it. And then, just through literally grace of other people coming into my life saying, hey, you might want to check out this book to read. Because I think the key with anything in life is a little bit out of just the digital clutter, but just in life, being able to share what you're going through can be really powerful to those that are closest to you, just sharing what's going on, what's happening. And it's very much intimidating to do that. But ultimately what can happen is they can provide you with some great insights or maybe some resources to look at. And it just allows you to, and that's what I did. I just opened up, kind of share what was going on. And, that's where all of a sudden this started to build for me and my own positive momentum of just taking these one step at a time. And it's small wins. You don't have to switch your life all of a sudden. I've done that in certain situations, but so I have experience with that. But ultimately, the key is just to take small wins at a time to really build the momentum for your life. So I hope that helps too. I hope that answers.
Yeah, that does. I was, before I had this job, I was in social media, like freelancing social media, creating content and like scheduling it. And I felt like I was on a deadline every day. And I kind of experienced the same thing you did, where I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I just realized like I was so stressed out all the time. And it was because I was constantly on that, like daily on a deadline. I've got to get these posts up and these posts up. And I feel like in the social media world, as someone who's a content creator or whatever, it's especially like any world where you have those deadlines online constantly. So that's an interesting point. We actually talked about something related to what you said about time in last week's lunchtime topic. We were talking about budgeting your time. Like we tend to look at money as the most valuable thing and not time. And how, if we had that view, we would be probably make more money and be more productive. But like we instead go at it with like, we don't really budget, and that causes us to fail in a lot of other ways in terms of like setting our priorities and how we manage people. Even like the talk was specifically about leadership and how when we fail to budget our time and prioritize things, we're really failing our team members essentially. So I thought that was an interesting point you made there. And anywho.
Yeah, no, yeah. It's powerful. And it goes just to, talk a little bit more about that too, is, if we're not setting those priorities each day, then ultimately our whole day, especially if it's in that digital space, is just going to be directing where our attention is going to go. And so just being able to set those priorities, and you can take that overarching into life, into other areas of life. But if we can have that and we show up each day, at least knowing what those are, then that even just helps us immensely more than where we were before not doing that, for how our time is allocated. And you realize in the end that all of a sudden things start to become effortless in how you're showing up each day, what you're doing. You're starting to really see that enjoyment of the journey too, that can come up.
Cool. Will you remind me a little bit of the programs you're offering right now? Because I know you coach people on this, like to keep them accountable and help come alongside them and say like, this is how we're going to get through this together. So yeah.
Yeah, so in the past I've had programs where it's like accelerator programs where groups come together and we go through this process of decluttering our digital worlds, as well as other programs. I'm actually going through a transition with that, just based off of taking another inventory of my priorities and where I want to spend my time. So what I do now is I go one-on-one with people and go through the coaching process of diving deep, especially for those that need accountability. I know that was me, so I needed someone to really hold my hand through the process. So I help those working through digital decluttering one-on-one. If that's something too for people that are interested in, they can always go on LinkedIn, send me a message directly, and we can set up a call. But that is something where I feel very passionate about, because then what I'm doing moving forward as an update for everyone here is starting in later on this year too. I'll be going through, depending with the pandemic and abilities to travel, going and traveling across the country, being able to meet with people and talk more about not only digital decluttering, but ultimately, how do we have fun in our lives? Because I think a big part of that is the digital decluttering, but I also think it comes into adventures that you can experience in life. Because again, if you have more time through the digital decluttering, where do you put that time? Because it creates that vacuum. Where are you going to put that time? If that's towards, spending time with your kids, going on adventures as a family, or other areas of creating adventures, maybe even if it's just at home or playing board games. But it's just, that's a part of it, as well as self-leadership. So I'll be starting to travel when that can really happen fully. It's just always, it's tough. We've gone through like 3 or 4 different iterations of the plan for travel for the States. But again, that's what's happening for me. I have also a new podcast that's launching out. So I had an outdoor running podcast that was focused on my joy of running and going and doing ultra marathons. So there's another one coming out called Something Fun Podcast. So it goes along the lines of, hey, I think back to when I was younger, especially 2020 has been a whole year of it. But like I missed always saying, hey, let's go do something fun. And so this podcast is going to be able to help bring in top level individuals talking about how do we create more fun in our lives. And again, a big part of that is the digital decluttering and digital alignment. But always happy to connect with people on LinkedIn and talk more for those that want that accountability moving forward.